Sarutobi sighed. It had only been a day since the mighty Kyuubi had been destroyed as the Kanahanian population believed, but in reality, it had just been sealed into a boy who had just had his umbilical cord cut, the Yondame's very own son, but also taking the life of the Yondame as he did it, and causing Sarutobi to be called back into the paperwork-heavy job. He had enjoyed retirement and had only accepted to be back in the job as Konoha had just received a strong blow and couldn't look weak. But now, he had to tell the Kanahanian population what had really happened. He had written out a speech for it, as he didn't want to be stuck for something to say, but was having trouble. But in any way, the Yondame had wanted his son to be thought of as a hero in the village for taking the burden. They won't think of him as a hero. He'll just be thought of as the Kyuubi itself, said a voice from the corner of the room. And the Hokage spun around, not having noticed the presence of anyone, making him think that he was just getting tired. But upon seeing who it was, he realized how they had gotten in without his noticing. Said person was a man who looked in his 20s, with chestnut brown hair that fell in bangs around his face and reached his shoulder at the back. His eyes were obsidian and didn't have a single scratch on him, despite his highly dangerous job. He wore loose-fitting black trousers half covering a pair of black boots with steel parts, and his top half was only covered by a three-quarter-length red trench coat made of demon skin, a very rare and valuable material that was also very protective and fireproof, on top of a piece of dull metal chest plate armor, and not a weapon in sight, though in reality, he was armed enough for 4 men. How long have you been there for? About 6 hours, long enough to know what's going on. But believe me, they won't see Naruto as a hero. I know what it's like to have a demon inside you. And look how my childhood fucked itself up. So why are you back? To stop you making a mistake you will regret to your grave, Gigi. They would really hate him for harboring the Kyuubi. Too many lives have been lost. No family didn't sustain losses, and everyone lost the Yondame. For them to not hate the Kyuubi, and they will believe that in killing the Kyuubi, hence Naruto, will ease their suffering. You know what my own childhood was like would really let him go through the same thing. Sarutobi shook his head sadly. Exactly. Don't tell them. Just say that the Kyuubi really has died from the Yondame using a suicidal jutsu, a life for a life sort of jutsu. And nobody knows of Naruto's birth, as Erasure had a secret marriage and a secret life. Not many know his real name. Yes, Erasure always said that H wanted to keep his private life exactly that, private. But then what do I do? I don't know. I've never had to look after a child. Could you learn very quickly? The man placed a hand on his hip and raised an eyebrow. Are you implying that I'm going to take the little Gaki? Who better? You know what to do so that his own childhood isn't like your own. You know the burdens of being a Jinchuriki, and you can train him. Please, Keshiro, I don't want to place him in an orphanage, and I don't know who else to ask. Jiraiya, suggested the man. Actually, scratch that. That would instantly go downhill as soon as the kid is old enough to read and finds one of Jiraiya's novels. Precisely. Sarutobi, I cannot look after a child. It is a full-time job, and you know what my job is like, and I don't want to have the kid around if anything happens, nor do I want to have to be distracted by worrying about him. I will gladly train him and be around a lot, but I cannot be his primary guardian. Are you sure that there is nobody else? Well, there is Tsunade, but I'm a bit afraid of being hit through a wall for asking. And we don't want the kid an alcoholic gambling junkie, but she's the best bet, and I promise to look out for him and train him properly. Fine, I'll call Tsunade here. /0/ Tsunade was having a really bad day. She had lost most of her money in a pinball parlor, followed up by being chased by people wanting her to pay back some IOUs, whom she had to knock through several walls to have time to escape. Shizen had gotten food poisoning, which was untreatable. And finally, the newly reinstated Hokage had summoned her back to Konoha for some reason or the other, and she couldn't exactly refuse. Especially so soon after the tragic but heroic death of the Yondaime. She sighed and made her way towards the village of Kanehagakure no Sato, carrying a sick Shizen slung over her shoulder, grumbling about annoying old senseis. /0/ You want me to do what? Tsunade, please calm down, said the Sandaime hastily. Knowing what happened when somebody got Tsunade angry, hell, she had once broken every bone in somebody's right arm just for waking her up and had refused to heal it out of annoyance. Why should I look after a kid? What about Jiraiya? No, scratch that thought. But why can't anyone else do it? Because of who he is. At her questioning look, he continued. Erasure didn't kill the QB. Its power was just too great, so instead he sealed it inside a newly born baby, who also happens to be his own son. Naruto is that baby, which is why I can only let somebody I trust look after him, and you are the best for the job. But still, replied Tsunade, trying to think up an extremely good reason why not to. I haven't always got the time to look after a kid. I'm being hunted by debt collectors whenever they find out where I am. I won't always be able to look after him in any case, and I can't just leave him alone. True, but Keshiro has agreed to check up on the boy from time to time and train him, seeing as who the boy is housing. Keshiro, as in the one and only Keshiro. If there is one and only one, then how much choice do you get? Asked Keshiro from behind her. So why can't you take him? She asked him, and instantly remembered what he did for a living. Okay, fair enough. She grumbled. But I still don't think. She stopped talking when Sarutobi handed her a little bundle, showing an unruly mop of violently blonde hair on top of a small head belonging to a sleeping baby, who had faint whisker-like marks on his cheeks, and her heart melted as she held the small bundle, and she was struggling to keep an angry facade, which was being destroyed just by looking at the sleeping child in her arm, and she sighed. Fine, I'll do it, she grumbled, though the effect was being ruined by the smile on her face. What's his name? Naruto, and the surname that should be used by him is Uzumaki, as Kazame will attract far too much unwanted attention. He shouldn't stay in the village, as secrets don't often stay secrets around here. So take him on your journeys, and please try not to make your own lifestyle imprint on him too much. She scowled at him and would have hit him for that comment were her arms not full. I'll drop in time to time, though don't expect me to babysit him whilst you go off blowing all of your money on some stupid bet, added Keshiro, and she nodded, then tried to kick him without jostling the baby, meaning that she missed, and Keshiro's reflexes were far superior to her speed, so she definitely missed, and Keshiro, being the mature and responsible adult that he is, replied by blowing a raspberry at her. Sarutobi rolled his eyes and chuckled at Keshiro's antics, while Tsunade was trying her best to sock him and failing, and finally cleared his throat, stopping what they were doing. Erasure asked me to make sure that Naruto got these at the time marked on them, he said, and placed a number of scrolls on his desk, which Tsunade placed carefully into a bag while Keshiro held Naruto. She was also given a number of other items, including the key to a trust fund set up for Naruto by the Yondaime, though she would need Keshiro's signature on a piece of paper before she could take out any money from it, to save it from being gambled in another of Tsunade's failed bets. "Well, I guess that I had better get going then," said Tsunade, and the two men in the room nodded, and she nodded back at them. She took all the bags and left the room. "Don't let him become a gambling alcoholic," said Sarutobi to Keshiro seriously, who smiled and nodded. "I thought that we had already covered that point." Naruto, due to the QB being inside him, was far more intelligent at a young age than any others, and was able to communicate before age 1, though not always in actual speak, and they had become proficient at deciphering his childish type of sign language or deciphering his childish handwriting. But it had become perfectly legible, and he was completely fluent by the time that he had come to the age when other children would be speaking shakily. It also turned out that the QB wasn't evil at all, and instead was the celestial guardian to the Kazame bloodline, which was why the Yondaime had found a way where the QB wouldn't be killed, and QB often helped Naruto, teaching him things as he slept, like the history of the world, and Naruto had retrieved a large amount of information and had recorded it, using the QB's memories. Using another fox as a medium, QB would also often travel with the three humans, and became their pet, though because of the seal placed by the Yondaime, he could only do it through a very small fox, and often grumbled whenever they cooed over the tiny kit, who really was adorable, even with the soul of a giant nine-tailed fox going through it. Keshiro kept true to his word, and turned up more times than necessary, but he had grown attached to Naruto, and he became Naruto's big brother, like Shizune was his big sister, and Tsunade his adoptive mother, as he instinctively knew that she wasn't his real mother, and both Tsunade and Kyubi had told him so anyways, but he loved her like one all the same. Keshiro began training him as soon as he was able to understand what was going on, which was at about age 3, and he had to wear weights, starting extremely light, but it was hard at first for the 3-year-old. Though Keshiro had used one of his own training methods with Naruto, and had given him a small white pill, which increased muscle gain rate 100-fold. And Naruto's strength increased at a speed that was only possible with the pill, though Tsunade had shouted at Keshiro for doing something so ridiculously dangerous to her son, until Naruto, letting his brother take the brunt of her anger, told her that it was fine and that he actually enjoyed the training, as it gave him something to do on the road. And since the weights were self-adjusting so that they would always make it straining for him, then he would always be improving, even whilst walking, and he also trained inside his mindscape with the QB, and since he developed in his mind, his body also got the changes. 2. Though he hadn't understood QB's explanation why. When he had started training, he had been given the second scroll from the Yondaime, the first being a letter to him examining things and saying sorry that he couldn't be around to look after Naruto himself, and the second scroll contained a set of exercise routines leading up to the Kazame family taijutsu style, the lightning flicker, and also the Uzumaki scrolls from his mother's family, which contained their taijutsu style and some other things of the families. "Come on, you lazy git. You're supposed to be running another 3 laps," called Keshiro from where he watched Naruto fall, and rest for a moment. And the child got back up again and started running again. Never one to turn down on of Keshiro's challenges, as they often promised ramen as a reward for completion, the one thing that he was never able to resist. If you do it, then I'll teach you a jutsu. And jutsus. He was a total sucker for jutsus. He finished off the last 2 laps, which happened to be over a mile each, but all in the name of training, and sat in front of expectantly. Very well, I will teach you a jutsu, but you do not have the chakra control for it, which will be the next exercise. Naruto groaned. You will have to learn how to climb trees. Ano, how does that help me improve chakra control? Because the exercise is wrongly named, tree running would be an apt name for it, as you have to run vertically, using chakra to stick to the tree, maintaining a constant amount of chakra running through your feet. Too little, and you fall. Too much, and your foot goes through the tree, and both can be painful, especially if your foot goes right through and you get splinters. He then explained the finer points to doing it, and the young child listened attentively, making sure that he remembered every single bit of it. Not that he would forget, as QB was there to remind him, and he had a very good memory. He then had to try it, and got up about 2 feet before falling back and landing on his arse hard, and Keshiro chuckled, earning him a glare from the child, which just served to make him laugh harder, and Naruto joined in after a short while, getting back up and rubbing his throbbing rear end. Naruto then tried to climb the tree again, and again, and again, and again, and well, you get the point. Keshiro read a book, which isn't bright orange or not allowed to be read by children, by the way, whilst Naruto slowly started to inch his way up the tree, only managing to get so high on his first 50 tries because of the pill he had taken, which helped in all aspects of ninja training, and his chakra reserves were absolutely massive because his stamina was gargantuan in size, and Tsunade often had to resort to a sleeping jinjutsu used in Nin medicine to get him to go to sleep before midnight and to stay asleep past 4, as Naruto never slept long, as his massive stamina didn't need it, which just meant that Keshiro could torture train him for longer, and the hunter Nin spent much longer with them than he did actual hunting, though he would sometimes disappear for a while if there were rumors of Nookenins in the area. It took Naruto 17 hours to complete the exercise, and by that time, he was pretty knackered, whereas others would have died of chakra exhaustion, though Naruto did kind of fall asleep in mid-step and crashed into the soft ground, snoring loudly, causing Keshiro to snicker and continue reading, making no move to get Naruto up off the ground, though change his mind at what Tsunade would do to him, meaning how many trees he would go through if she found her son like that. So sighing, he picked up the sleeping boy and carried him back to the inn where they were staying at in a small village in the middle of nowhere. Naruto received the next scroll from his father on his 4th birthday, along with a set of training clothes, which were far more durable than the tatters that had become of the clothes he had used in training, along with a set of real and very sharp shuriken and kunais, a scroll with a medical jutsu from Tsunade, who had said that he could now heal his own cuts for a change, especially know that he had the throwing weapons, and a jutsu scroll containing the instructions to using the kawarimi, as Naruto had already learned the Bunshin no Jutsu and Hinge no Jutsu, which mixed together made great tools for pranks, which he absolutely loved, and about which Tsunade had shouted at Keshiro for encouraging him. Keshiro taught him how to throw the 2 different weapons accurately and with great effect, though he made it a lot harder by making Naruto have to hit the board ring first, which was extremely hard, as the kunai was blade-weighted, and many great weapons masters were not able to do it, which was why Keshiro made Naruto do it, though without telling him how hard it was, as Naruto had a way of doing things through perseverance and determination. So saying that all genins were able to do it just made his determination to do it even greater. His chakra control was pretty bad, though his enormous stamina made up for it, and Keshiro rued the day that Tsunade teach him the trick behind her monstrous strength, which he hoped was not for a very, very, very long time, as one person punching him through walls was bad enough, but two would just be hell, and being hit through a wall by a young child would just be humiliating, no matter who that child was. The years passed in a flurry of training, running from debt collectors, training, traveling, training, a lot of ramen eating, training, Tsunade hitting Keshiro through a wall for the most trivial of things, though they were also often accidents, as she wasn't able to control her strength when she was angry, more training, and then some more ramen eating. To Tsunade's annoyance, Naruto opted more towards Keshiro's job rather than her own. Though with his atrocious chakra control, he would probably end up hurting someone rather than healing them. Though he had gotten the basic medical jutsus, even if he wasted a lot of chakra doing it. Once again made up by his huge reserves, though she didn't think much of the idea of her son being in so much danger. But Keshiro had been no help whatsoever in dissuading him, and the 100 ion question actually encouraged it, much to her bane and the destruction of many walls and anything solid in the path of his trajectory. And he often secretly took Naruto along when he went hunting at night, though the boy had to stay behind an invisibility shield, which could also turn completely dark by a simple mental command of Keshiro's, used if there was going to be a lot of unexpected bloodshed, as he didn't want to traumatize Naruto. The years passed, and Naruto continued to grow, train, improve beyond their expectations, and still had far too much time to pull pranks in between, though at least he had time to be a child. Again, much to Tsunade's annoyance and Keshiro's encouragement, Naruto had started creating his own explosives, using them in pranks which started off as paint bombs, using bright fluorescent pink paint, but that had moved on to actually useful weapons, which Tsunade approved of little more, but had actually made quite a bit of money, more like a small fortune, by actually managing, with Keshiro's help, to set up his own company, and they sold in Konoha as weapons, and they were currently in correspondence with the Hokage over a deal to make the highly improved version of the traditional smoke bombs part of standard equipment for those of the rank of Chunin and above, and then another deal which was basically hiring Naruto as an inventor for the AMBU, something that had shocked the two greatly. But it meant great business too, and if it helped AMBU, then who were they to argue as long as the price was right? Not to mention that making the smoke bombs part of official equipment would mean that they would have to be bought, making them even more business, and they had agreed to both deals and had even given them a 20 discount on the smoke bombs bought as part of the standard kit. And the Hokage would be sending them the contracts as soon as possible. At every birthday, and sometimes sooner, Naruto would receive the next scroll from his father, and his taijutsu skills were getting to be very good in his two parents' families' taijutsu styles, and he was hoping to soon get the Shushin, or body flicker scroll to learn, as that was the finishing piece to the style. And so far, he was using a different ninjutsu / genjutsu hybrid that made everyone looking at him when he used it to only be able to see flicker and blurs, but the shushin was the real thing. At age 8, he participated in taking out some Durank Nukanins, which was training and battle experience for him, though he followed Keshiro in use of stealth whenever possible, as that was the way of the ninja, and he had taken him out with ease, using a sleeping gas bomb of his own creation, of course, and had carried their unconscious corpses to the nearest police station, not bothering in collecting the meager bounty. As a reward for succeeding his first battle against Nukanins, however easy it was, Keshiro taught him the technique that would become his signature technique, the Kage Bunshin. It only took Naruto 5 hours to get it, and that was all on his own with no more help than a scroll. But the Kage Bunshins were incredibly useful, and he started using them to create masses of the weapons that he sold instead of spending a lot of time doing it himself. And from then on, production boosted by 2,000, and crate loads of the explosives were being created and transported to all main hidden villages, except the ones in direct conflict against Konoha, which meant that Konoha, the Wave, Suna, and Cloud were all getting them, but not Stone or Grass, as Stone was currently at war with Konoha, and Grass was working behind them, and the hidden villages weren't the only ones to get them, as even the smallest villages with ninjas in them had deliveries of the weapons sent to them. And during all this, the company run by Naruto, paperwork done by clones, and Keshiro there for financial help and ideas, expanded and became better known around the Shinobi continent, and the contracts were signed by both sides, and they were getting ideas for real weaponry from the ANBU, though Naruto still had to come up with how to do what he had decided to do for the very vague ideas sent by ANBU, though he made the ideas far more destructive than they had originated, like a flash bomb, which also gave off a special sound that completely messed up your sense of balance and direction, often resulting in vomiting, and it also messed with nerve reaction time, making the victims far more susceptible to being caught by a kunai when they recovered from the initial attack. And then another that was far more destructive and was a shrapnel grenade which sent out shrapnel, as the name implied. But the shrapnel went flying at certain parts of the body, and there were 3 levels of them. Green was the first one, and it targeted normal bits of flesh. Yellow went for arteries and sensitive points, whilst red ones targeted special pressure points that caused great pain, and most importantly, and this was why they were especially dangerous, they were made to especially target the eyes, and they had a 100 chance of penetrating the eyeball without a hand being held in front of it, and even then they sometimes curved around. His training was going well, and he had completely forgotten about the weights that continued to upgrade themselves as he had gotten so used to them, and only remembered then when Keshiro had hobbled around, massaging his foot after kicking the ankle weight, and they had found out that the weights had actually all maxed out, and so he was clamped with a second set of them. Kyuubi had also been training him hard, and Naruto learned a third taijutsu style called the Fire Fox, and used an ability that had taken him ages to master, which was to convert chakra into fire, and then fired it out of his tenketsus, burning anything but him. The Demon Fox Lord had also taught him how to call upon the Demon Chakra, which was far more potent than Naruto's, but also far more volatile, so it should only be used for the much bigger jutsus, which he also taught Naruto, along with also teaching him strategy. Since he was taught in his own mindscape, Naruto could make the rune change to whatever he wanted it to, so he would be taught what to do in certain positions, demonstrated by the Kyuubi, who could also influence the room, and the bars were actually gone, though the QB still couldn't leave and couldn't take over Naruto's body, and wouldn't even if he could, as he was the Kazame's guardian and so couldn't hurt them. The QB had only actually attacked Konoha in the first place because his mate and kids had been killed by people, idiots, who wore Konoha Hata'ate, and so he had charged in without even trying to find out anything about who he was attacking first. Another 3 years passed, and he had already become an official Hunter Nin, following his brother's example, learning more and more as he went along. Though he followed the rule of quality over quantity, as his brother did, and he had to master a jutsu before he would be taught the next, which was great incentive to get the jutsu mastered, and would often completely wear himself out by staying up all night. Having found a way to overcome the effect of the sleeping technique that Tsunade used to use on him back in the good old days when he was hyperactive and was now just boisterous instead. Like with every year, he received another scroll from his father, sometimes also containing some other jutsus, but he was getting ever closer to the end of the taijutsu style. In his mother's scroll, he found out all about the family, and it turned out that the Uzumakis were once great hunters with devastating weapons, but then they had been almost wiped out, only leaving one line with a recessive gene. He learned the taijutsu style as best as he could without the special items that were passed down the line, which made the final part of the style possible, and was now also on the third of the fox styles, the Ice Fox, following the Earth Fox, which all included using chakra to create or control the elements. He was still inventing like crazy, and the massive money that had been a small fortune before was now a huge fortune, as the weapons he created were being sold like wildfire to both ninjas and pranksters alike. But his biggest customer were ANBU, who had lots of money to pay with, and needed the ones that cost more, and they had a lot of people to outfit. An ordinary but powerful flashbang had also been added to the list of items that would be part of standard equipment, along with a tracking device he had created, which was to always be able to find your teammates, and it would also tell you what their condition was like, though rather disturbingly and hilariously too. The biggest users were crazed fangirls. And little did he know that one Uchiha Sasuke was cursing their inventor to the ninth hell. Tsunade had now long ago stopped trying to turn him into a Medinin, though made sure that he would be able to heal properly, and resigned herself to accept his chosen career, though was still allowed to fret about it, which she took advantage of a lot. His Hunter Nin career was going well, and he was learning more and more with every mission, and had performed his first kill at age 10, which had taken a while to get over, but he realized that he would have to kill as a ninja, and it would be incredibly hard to be a Hunter Nin when B-rank Nukanins and above had to be killed on sight. So he accepted it as another step in life and a valuable lesson to remember. But now that he was 11, he had to go back to his birthplace and become a genin. The walk back to the gates of Konoha was a long and tedious one, and far longer than necessary, but they purposefully took their time in getting back, while still making good time and training along the way, not to mention clearing the road for bandit and such as they went along. What had once been a group of 2, Tsunade and Shizun, had grown to 6. Tsunade, Shizun, Naruto, Keshiro, Kit/Fluffy, the fox that Kyuubi adopted, and Tontin, the pig that Shizun had gotten a number of years ago and had dressed up. It took them 2 months to reach the gates of Konoha, and Naruto trained in raw physical strength as he went along, smashing clean through trees, a feat only possible for him after all those years of training. And as always, he was thinking of new weapons and inventions to possibly create as he punched reinforced logs and would sometimes stop, chuckle, write something down in the notepad that he kept his ideas in, and then went back to hitting the log. He had also adopted a new weapon which he had ordered to be imported from the West, way away from the Shinobi continent, and had been practicing with it ever since it had arrived. It was a special custom-made high-tech crossbow with extras that he had created and added to it, including a much more powerful sight, infrared and heat sensor, and made it always shoot in a straight line, with bolts that were specially crafted by him to do a number of things from self-shuriken kagabunshin, which worked on not just shurikens to armor-piercing and fire ones. He quickly taught himself how to fire it effectively and accurately, and how to hold it still whilst firing from a long way away and get very accurate shots in. And it soon also added a feature that made all bolts invisible until they hit, and completely silent too. The perfect long-range silent assassination weapon. He had also created his own outfit, which had similarities to Keshiro's, but also different. His trench coat was a blood red, which also played a factor in fighting, as it would psychologically attack his opponents. He had a black bandana instead of a hatate to cover his very visible yellow hair. He had the crossbow slung over his back. He wore full-length black trousers and actually had ninja sandals black. But the biggest difference was his shirt. He wore a crisp dark gray shirt, which when he removed the trench coat, it read Golden Fox on the back in a kanji, written in red in front of a snarling golden fox. And he also used sunbon needles instead of kunais for the most part. "This is Konoha?" asked Naruto, looking from the higher ground that they stood on, overlooking the huge village of Konoha, the only hidden village to which Naruto had never been at an age where he would remember it, and let out a low whistle. "Yep, that's the grand village of Kanehagakure no Sato, the village hidden among the leaves," replied Keshiro, beaming at his hometown. "No shit," muttered Naruto, looking at the forest that completely surrounded Konoha for miles around. "And that's where we're going now," replied Keshiro, pointing to the Hokage's tower that stood higher than the village. Naruto turned to Keshiro with a grin on his face, and Keshiro looked back at him with an identical grin. "Race you!" They both shouted at the same time and jumped down the loose stone slope, creating two dust clouds as they surfed down, and then started running towards the edge of the village, not bothering with identifying themselves as they raced towards the Hokage's tower, where an amused Hokage watched them through his crystal ball, noticing how Naruto acted his age and Keshiro acted far younger than his age, whilst they shared the same dangerous job. Naruto charged chakra into his feet and ran up the outer wall of the village, back flipping forwards and landing on his feet on the top of the wall, and then jumped forwards with chakra-enhanced legs and tried to catch up to Keshiro, who was a few feet in front of him, and he overtook Keshiro when he threw a stone, hitting a pressure point on the middle of the outside of Keshiro's thigh, making the man fall and glare at him on the way down, before tripping Naruto up, but they both recovered very quickly and continued their race towards the tower, whereas Tsunade and Shizune, along with the two animals, just walked through the gates after identifying themselves, traveling toward the tower slowly. The race ended in a draw, which was often the outcome of their competitions, which could be about the most trivial of things, and they entered the Hokage's tower together, where they waited calmly in the waiting room for the others to arrive, which was about 10 minutes later, where they found Keshiro sleeping and Naruto idly chewing on a sunbon, whilst thinking of new ideas and trying to find inspiration in things around the room. And they all went together into the Hokage's office with Kit on Naruto's shoulder, and the Hokage looked up at them, not looking at all surprised. "It's good to see you back," he smiled at them, and they bowed to him, and Naruto was introduced to the Hokage, and Naruto and Keshiro stood up when offered seats, more out of habit than suspicion, which was understandable. And in any case, they were talking grown-up things, and Naruto was looking at a picture of his father, the Yondaime, wondering what he had been like but didn't ask. Conversation turned to different things after a while, and now it was more Naruto and the Hokage talking about stuff. Naruto had known that he would be coming back to be a genin, and they also discussed things with the business dealings he had with Konoha, and he received a new list of special request items from ANBU, and the Hokage himself also added in a few suggestions. And Naruto showed him a few new items, half of which weren't explosives, but other useful items, which still had elements of explosives, like a special flare where you drew the kanji message yourself, and also several weapon tags, like a shock tag that he had created and had used an unsuspecting Keshiro as beta tester for. Then he was told that the genin exam would be starting in 10 minutes, and after an annoyed glare, Naruto jumped out of the window and sped for the academy and arrived late. He walked towards the classroom and used a hinge to disguise himself as a chunin and knocked on the door, which was opened by Yumino Irika. "Yes?" asked Irika. "You're wanted in classroom 23, said Naruto, using the number for a classroom which he had seen earlier to be empty, and Irika thanked him before rushing off. Naruto gave an amused snicker and walked into the classroom, plunking down in an empty seat as he dropped the hinge, happily whistling to himself, innocently ignoring curious looks. Irika came back a few minutes later, looking annoyed, and spotted a student whom he had never seen before who was whistling and picking his teeth with a senbon. He grumbled, shot the student a glare, and went to the front of the classroom, involuntarily congratulating a good ruse, and started speaking about the importance of what being a genin was, which to Irika's annoyance, Naruto and Narashikamaru were sleeping through. And he then started calling people up to do the Bunshin no Jutsu. He finally called out Naruto's name, which was responded to by a series of soft snores. So sighing, Irika went up to Naruto and made to tap him on the shoulder, but his wrist was suddenly grasped faster than he could see by Naruto's hand. I'm up, grumbled Naruto, and went down to the bottom of the class. Please do a Bunshin no Jutsu, stated Irika. Naruto winced at how easy the test was and didn't even bother with hand seals and just yawned, making 10 clones appear out of nowhere and yawn with him. Irika's eyes boggled at this, and after many failed tries, involving opening and closing his mouth until Naruto commented that he looked like a guppy fish at feeding time, said hench, and Naruto understood perfectly. So once again, without seals or words, all 10 clones turned into differently decorated clowns, all holding different colored balloons and launching party streamers. Irika got the streamers out of his hair, and Naruto canceled both techniques before sitting back down in his seat and resuming his distracting snoring, which Irika got in stereo, with Shikamaru on the other side of the room. All right, now you will all be fighting against someone, he announced, and called up 2 people to go first. Many boring fights later, and 2 catfights between Uchiha Sasuke fangirls. The final fight arrived, and the Uchiha in question was called up and was pitted against Naruto, who somebody had to throw a book at to wake up, despite the book never making contact, having been thrown back with 4 shuriken buried into it. And Naruto stood at his side of the makeshift arena. "I don't know how you did what you did with the Bunshins," said Sasuke, smirking, "but however you managed to trick everyone, you're going down. You might as well give up already. You're going to lose. And you might as well shut up already, because I don't give a damn about what some arrogant Uchiha cretin thinks. Just because everybody else seems to be adamant on wiping your R's for you doesn't mean that I will bow down to your every whim and inflate your already overlarge ego." Naruto snapped back. Sasuke made to hit him, but the Uchiha hit nothing but air. Naruto stood behind him and gave Sasuke a nudge in the back of the knee, and the boy toppled over far too easily. Well, it looks like the pampered Uchiha princess is all talk and no muscle to back it up. He snickered and thumb-jabbed a nerve cluster in Sasuke's shoulder, making his entire right arm go numb and irresponsive. He tried to kick Naruto, but ended up getting his leg caught and was lifted upside down by his ankle, making most of the girls in the class faint when his shirt fell down, and Naruto dropped him on his head painfully. "Pitiful," he muttered, and struck another pressure point on the side of the neck, knocking the Uchiha unconscious without having to even come close to using a fraction of his power. Irika, along with pretty much everybody in the class, stared at where the best ninja in the class had just had his arse handed to him by a stranger, and it took a few minutes for them to shake themselves, and half of USFG went to see if Sasuke was all right, whilst the other half went to try and bash Naruto's head in, who was of course sleeping, having not done enough of it during the night from excitement and anxiety, which was now replaced with concern. Concern about how long it would be before these kids were killed when they are at this level of skill. Winner, Uzumaki Naruto, called Irika, and everybody went up to get a hate from the front, though Irika had to throw Naruto's one to him, which was once again snatched in midair, and Naruto tied it around his neck where it fell like a loose necklace. And he kept his eyes half open as he watched the students milling around the class, and he continued the evaluation he had made of them whilst he had been asleep. But Naruto used an old ninja trick, which meant that while he did rest, he was still 95 aware of his surroundings, and it also made him lose perception of time, meaning that long periods could just be slept through easily, even if he wasn't tired. He gently and harmlessly removed the small bug from his shoulder and set it down on his desk, where it flew back to the Aburame, who, just like everyone else in the Aburame clan, was as expressionless as the bugs that inhabited them shudder. There was the Nara, who was as lazy as all the males in the clan, and as frightened of the females in the clan as all other males in the clan, and he was sat next to a continuously munching Akimichi, who were the only ninjas to allow themselves to get that size, as it tied into their bloodline jutsus. Then there was the arrogant Uchiha, who had nothing but hatred and revenge in his eyes, both directed at his brother, who had killed the entire clan for unknown reasons, who was valiantly trying to get rid of the founders of Uchiha Sasuke fan club, a Yamanaka and a Haruno, whose bloodline limits seemed to be having pink hair. Then there was also a Hyuga, if the white pupilless eyes were anything to go by, though she seemed far more reserved than the ordinary Hyugas. Judging by the overpowering smell of dog, he would also guess that the kid with the dog on his head was an Inuzuka, the dog clan. The end of the class soon came, and Naruto decided to exit via the window, as it was quicker and much more fun, and walked back to the Hokage's office. Upon arrival, the secretary nodded him through, and he found the Hokage waiting for him. Though Naruto was sure that he had seen a corner of an orange book in the Hokage's robe's front pocket, but quickly dismissed the idea. Naruto, I'm glad that you came, said the Hokage, and Naruto smiled. Well, when you only know where the academy and Hokage's tower are, and you have just come from the academy, then where else would I go to? He asked. The Hokage chuckled and nodded. Good point. I would like to congratulate you on your performance in the test, and I just got the results through. And you came first from beating the top academy student in your outstanding performance with the two jutsus. I've learned far more difficult ones than just those, replied Naruto. But I doubt that you wanted me here to talk about that. Correct. I would first of all like to give you this, he said, handing over a wrapped package, which Naruto placed in his bag to open later. And I would also like to speak to you about something of an important matter. Naruto took the proffered seat, and the Hokage continued. Seeing the exam results this year, which were a good turnout, here he missed Naruto's expression of shocked disbelief. And with some of the abilities in the class, I have decided, with the village head council's acceptance, to make a different team this year. One for a specific purpose, and quite simply, with your outstanding skills and career, you are one of the 4 choices for this team. If you believe that I am a good choice for the team, whatever its purpose, then I will do so because that is your wish and that is good enough. I would still like to have your agreement to it, and you need to sign this contract if you do, said the Hokage, and slid over a form on a clipboard, which Naruto quickly read and signed. Who are the other 3? You shall find out tomorrow at noon, where you will be meeting your instructor at Training Grounds 15, and I'll get you a map of the village so that you can get around easier. And by the way, I was asked just earlier when someone from ANBU found out that you were here, when the spike bomb would be completed. That one? I finished it about a month ago, actually. Give me a second, he said, rummaging trough a bag 10 times as big on the inside than out, and finally pulled out a small sphere which had 16 spikes all evenly placed around a sphere, though 8 of them longer, making it stand up like a cube, and those were the only spikes to do with the device that were round-ended. Okay, basically, this has a thin layer of chakra all around it, allowing it to stick to any surface necessary, and it will shoot exactly 1,000 spikes of this size, he said, showing a diagram of the mentioned spikes, which are longer than the sphere was wide, and they will shoot out in all directions, except directions where the chakra sticking is in use, in which case the spikes will be redirected somewhere else. It has a timer that can go up to 30 seconds, starting at 5, as 1 second is suicidal, and all spikes are armor-piercing, he said, and handed over a small manual that came with it, half of it about security, and the Hokage thanked him and handed him a check with the price that they had agreed on, and he would get 50 of all of the ones sold. He also handed over a package with 3 other completed weapons that ANBU had requested, and received 3 more checks, and informed the Hokage that they would be getting a large supply of all 4 by the end of the month. They then talked pleasantries for a while, and then Naruto said his goodbyes and left the Hokage to get back to his reading, and using the map that he had been given, he soon got the checks deposited into his bank account, which he hadn't withdrawn from for a while and didn't need to either. He used the map to find a ramen place, which the Hokage had personally placed a scrawled red ring around. And that was where he went to Ichiraku's ramen, where he inhaled 14 bowls of ramen before deciding that he needed to stock up on certain weapons and headed to the weapons store. "Is there anything that we can help you with, dear?" asked the woman behind the counter. "I just needed to stock back up on several things. I'm running low on explosive tags, shurikens, and I wouldn't mind browsing around to see what you've got either." "You new around here?" she asked, and he nodded. "Well, business is being slow today, so I can give you a quick tour if you want." He nodded, and she showed him around the large shop, which was stocked full of shinobi weaponry. "In that cabinet over there are all of the throwing weapons, which our family specializes in, along with most weapons," she said, pointing at a huge glass cabinet which spanned the length of a whole wall, and she then showed him around the rest of the shop, which contained what seemed to be every single type of blade imaginable. "We've also just received a new set of special explosives which ANBU apparently uses if you're interested," she said, and showed him a cabinet containing incredibly familiar items. "Not necessary. I'm stocked up fully on them," he said, and showed the inside of the right side of his trench coat, where a multitude of explosives were stuck to the coat, causing her to raise her eyebrows. But she didn't say anything and went back around the shop inspecting different weapons. He finally got the items that he needed. And also, as a treat for himself, he got the best handmaster crafted no dachi that they had, surprising the woman, but the cost of the purchase was enough to make up for a week of no business at all, so she kept silent about it and instead handed him a leaflet that explained about the no dachi, including about safety and handling, and even a basic exercise to do with it. And it also explained that it had been crafted with pure chakra fused into it, making it virtually indestructible. Naruto left the shop with his new purchases, and as his crossbow was currently matterless, a special tag he and Keshiro had created for the sole purpose of carrying many things all at once without it getting in the way. It made the thing lose all of its matter, which was kept within the tag, and the tag became a sort of summoning scroll for whatever it was, though a lot easier to use, and it made it so that things could pass where it was, and it wouldn't weigh a thing, but it was still there, and the matterlessness could be reversed with a simple mental command, allowing quick draw, and meant that he could carry enormous loads on him without it showing or him having to lift anything, and was originally created for the shipments of the weapons that the 100-odd clones created. He attached a back sheath that the woman had given to him with it for free to his back, and slid the Nodachi into it, where the Nodachi's main sheath stuck inside the back sheath. The Nodachi itself was actually longer than he was, at about 7 feet in length, but made like traditional Japanese swords, in that it had virtually no air resistance when swung down and would cut through the air with ease. And while it was the length of a Zanbatsu, it wasn't chunky and far more silent. He quickly headed to the bookstore where he got a large book on everything to do with the practical side of the Nodachi, and after tracing a quick kanji on the sword making it, so that he would be the only one to ever be able to wield it, and anyone else would get 700,000 volts for their troubles, he headed to where his new apartment had been marked on the map. Upon arrival, he found out that he was sharing a 2-bedroom apartment with Keshiro and Kit, who was sleeping in his deep pockets, and Keshiro handed him a small graduation present in the form of a pair of sleeveless gloves with a metal backing, dark green in color, and made from higher snake demon skin, very valuable and very protective. And all demon hide was valuable because it was nearly suicidal for humans to try and get some of it, but being heinous due to the demons inside of them. Naruto and Keshiro made easily short work of the demons who were just like normal 60-foot snakes with a big appetite, but just far more poisonous, thicker hides, lightning-fast reactions, foot-long fangs, strange demonic mutations growing a new tail when you cut its old one of in seconds. That sort of thing, really. The next morning, Naruto headed to the academy where he would be officially registered as a genin, though he thankfully didn't have to be photographed by the grumpy bald man that photographed everyone else, as he already had ninja identification in the form of Hunter Nin identification, and used the same picture as that, and it went quickly. He picked up 10 bowls of ramen from Ichiraku as he went past the place, storing the ramen in transportable seal-lock bowls, on his way to Training Grounds 15. He was the first one there, and used his time to eat his ramen whilst waiting, invisible up a tree, for his teammates and sensei to arrive, thinking back to what the contract had said. His teammates soon arrived, and he saw the same Aburame who had placed a bug on him yesterday, the other guy who had been sleeping, and surprisingly, he also saw a girl who hadn't been in this year's class. Their sensei arrived exactly at noon, so not Kakashi. And for what he knew, which was a surprising amount, she was Yuhi Kurenai, Jinjutsu mistress and one of the Jounin instructors. She greeted the 3 genins who were down on the ground and asked, "The last guy not arrived yet?" "Been here longer than everyone else," replied Naruto from up the tree. Damn, even I didn't sense him there, though the red-eyed Kurenai, but said nothing out loud, and Naruto dropped down from the tree, landing on the ground perfectly, and Nodachi down to the size of katana, one of its special abilities, and their sensei sat down on the grass, though only the girl and the Nara sat down too, while Shino stayed standing with that emotionless mask on, and Naruto leaning against a tree, twirling a Senbon. Well, as you should all know, you are all part of a special team, which I first of all special because of the fact that there are 4 of you, but that is because of the special point of the team existing. But first of all, let's all introduce ourselves. I'm Yuhi Kurenai. I specialize in Jinjutsu, like gardening. I dislike perverts, especially ones with silver hair, a Hittite covering one eye, and who is chronically late, and who doesn't care about reading that perverted book in public. I don't have a lot of hobbies, except deciphering old Jinjutsu scrolls from the ancient archives. My hope for the future is to be able to discover the secrets of Jinjutsu that all Jinjutsu masters dream of deciphering. And I want to show that women can be good ninjas. "You next," she said, pointing at the lazy boy. "I'm Nara Shikamaru. I don't have any particular likes or dislikes. My hobbies include shogi and watching clouds. I dislike it when my mom starts shouting at me for not doing something that she asked me to do. I want to be a medium ninja, and then marry an average-looking woman and have ordinary kids," he said in a bored monotone, and everyone blinked at the lack of everything in his answer, but then Kurenai pointed to Shino. "Aburame Shino. I like bugs. I hate spiders. I enjoy bug collecting and finding out about special bugs. I do not like people who kill bugs for no reason, and I also dislike aerosol and fly traps. And I wish to add to my family's archives and find the golden-winged Kekii bug." She then pointed at the girl who none of them knew. "I'm Yamanaka Inoka. I failed last year and spent a remedial year, though my 2 teammates got badly injured / his family decided to move away. I sometimes, like both, otherwise dislike my younger sister by 1 year because she doesn't take being a kunoichi seriously and instead runs after the Uchiha kid who needs some attitude therapy. I spend my free time learning more about psychology to help me with creating my own jutsu to add to the bloodline jutsus of my family. Kurenai then pointed to Naruto and said, "Never seen you around before." I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I spent my whole life between being 5 days old and yesterday away from the village, where I was mainly trained by my Inaisen. I enjoy creating new explosive weaponry and have actually made a business out of it. I also like to invent new and annoying for my brother jutsus, a lot of them surprisingly effective, and I want to master my family taijutsu styles. I don't like arrogant people cough Uchiha Sasuke cough, and I don't like being underestimated, though I understand how effective it is in battle if you are. Kurenai nodded at all of them. Well, all of you are the best at what you do with the Genin, and you are all trained in stealth, which is part of the whole point of this team, which, like I said earlier, is a completely different one. She cleared her throat. This is a special operations hit squad. This is a special operations hit squad. Silence rang out through the forest, as none of the Genin had anything to say, and were not ones to say something simply for the sake of saying something, though they would have been in shock had they not already known, having signed the contracts. Because of this, you are special Genin, and are exempt from D-rank missions to save the time for training. You will all be taught to function together in a team, strengthening each other's weaknesses and assuming the different roles on the team. You will all be taught certain things together like strategy, protocol, hand signals, and such, but you will all also be receiving personalized training from people who are specialists in what they do, and I will be your Genjutsu instructor as well as General Sensei, which means that whilst you're a Genin, you are my responsibility, and I am the one who sorts things out for you, and such. Together, you cover certain areas, and it is mine and the others' jobs to fill in all of the gaps to make you a proper team for your job. The team's main purpose is assassination, though all sorts of things will be included in it. Today will be the start of your training, and we will start off with team building exercises to get you working together. And over the course of the training that you will be doing together, you will be learning all about each other's styles of fighting and abilities. If you ever need to ask something, then don't hesitate in asking. It's what I'm here for, among other things. Being a special team, your trainings are going to be different from other teams, and we will all be sleeping in the forest for a week at the very least, starting in a week's time. And in that time, you will all be learning survival training, but not the pissy training that the others go through. This is a get through it or get seriously injured and possibly die sort of survival training, which means an extensive A&BU crash course. You will be trained to be able to use anything in your surroundings as a potential weapon, and you will, in time, instinctively search any place for hostiles and dangerous terrain, as well as hiding places and advantage points. A mistake can cost yours and everybody else on your team's lives out in the field. So you will have to not just learn everything that you are taught, you will have to master it. Understood? All four heads nodded, and even the lazy as hell Shikamaru was listening, as this was serious, and being lazy could mean the other's deaths on his hands, which was something none of them wanted. Good. You will all be taught taijutsu by Mato Guy, who is a taijutsu specialist. Ninjutsu will be taught by a number of different people, and you all have your family's abilities to learn and master. I will be teaching you all Jinjutsu, like I mentioned earlier, and different people from ANBU will be training you in tactics. The basic ANBU training, really, how to make best use of terrain, problem solving, which means that you'll be given a situation which you have to figure how to get out of just by applying knowledge, strategy, and varying factors. This will be the training schedule commencing in a week's time, she said, and all handed them a scroll. Dawn, 8 a.m. Team Taijutsu Training. 8 Uhr morgens, 9 Uhr morgens breakfast. 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. training. 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. lunch. 2:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. training. 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. team building. 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. dinner. 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. free time. 11 p.m. dawn sleep. The periods AR just mark training because the people who are teaching you will have busy schedules, so you will be taught whenever is possible. But that is the basic timetable of what will happen for the next 2 weeks. The period marked free time is to do whatever you want to do, though I do urge you to do something constructive in that time. That schedule will start tomorrow. And today we're going to be doing lots of team building and getting to know each other, as well as getting sorted out. You all need special equipment and clothes better suited for the job, she said. And Naruto caught her muttering, and I'll rip that weirdo to pieces if he makes anyone wear that stupid spandex. They all followed her to get new equipment needed, and they went to the shop where Naruto had gone just yesterday, which was apparently the best weapon shop in Konoha. The woman there yesterday was gone, and it was now a man instead, and he nodded when he saw Kurenai, having been forewarned, and turned the sign around to read closed once they were inside, and he locked the door. He silently made a motion to beckon them to the back, where he opened a secret door, and they found themselves in a completely different part of the shop, which contained the weaponry not allowed to those of lower ranks. And Naruto once again spotted his own weapons there, though these are the much more dangerous ones like poisonous gas, the shrapnel ones, all 3 levels of them, the spike bomb he had given to the Hokage the previous day, and a special bomb created for mass destruction. Kurenai gave the man a list of what they needed, and he nodded before assembling the listed items, which was quite long, and 10 minutes later had 4 packages, whilst the 4 genin explored the place in the meantime, not touching anything. There was everything of a more dangerous nature in here, from special blades with kanjis giving them extra and very dangerous effects, to the more powerful version of the chakra pills that the Akimikis created, to the most deadly of Naruto's weaponry, and back again. Since they were now junior ENBU, they were outfitted for the main chest armor, the arm metal plates, 2 sets of standard black robes, plain white masks, which stuck to their faces by a layer of chakra on the inside of the mask, and they were then handed an ANBU katana and the normal clothes for ANBU, and then show where the changing rooms were. Naruto changed into the standard ANBU outfit, finding that the clothes were surprisingly comfortable and gave lots of mobility, and traced a few kanjis on the clothes, which was like placing a tag with the same kanjis on them, but left nothing physical or visible to give any clues, and made his kunai and shuriken holsters bigger on the inside than out to be able to hold more if needed. He placed several trace tags on the clothes to make them waterproof, to make it so that they would always regulate their temperature to keep them at a good temperature, and another to make them self-repairing, which was a tricky one, but when it worked, any rip or tear would be closed up on its own, which was pretty handy. He added a layer of protectiveness to the chest armor and arm guards, and kept the gloves as spares, though kept his own on, as they were definitely of a better quality. After all of that, he put on the black cloak, which completely covered him, but was still very mobile, and he did the same things to it too. He then looked around to try and find the mask, which seemed to want to play hide and stay hidden, despite the lack of hiding places, and in the process of turning his old clothes inside out to try and find it, he found several items, like his notepad that he always kept around, a small stash of his homemade chakra pills, which were so much more powerful than the Akimichi version. But these would kill anyone else. They were so powerful, and they would fill his enormous chakra reserves back up. Also, in the process of trying to find the damn mask, he came across the wrap package that the Hokage had given him a short while back, which he had completely forgotten about. Shrugging, he unwrapped the wrap package and opened it, and found a note on the outside of the object, which was wrapped up in foam. Naruto, this is a little something for you which I got, as you need one in the line of work that you have chosen. Look after it well. Sandame Hokage. Naruto put the note down and looked at the wrapped item, which he, obviously, unwrapped and stared in amazement at the item that the Hokage had given him. And he suddenly found himself very glad that the mask had become elusive and caused him to open it, and it solved a number of problems at once. It was mask, but far from a plain white one. It was white, as always, with fiery red and blazing orange stripes in the shape of a fox. It had slits for eyes and had ears poking up at the top. Its snout was short, but it was painted to make it look normal, and as if there was nothing off. On the forehead, like with other Hunter-nin masks, there was an engraving of the Konoha leaf, identifying him as a Konoha Hunter-nin. Smiling, he put it on, finding that the slits did nothing to hamper his sight, and he could see just as if he didn't have it on, which he guessed was a needed factor, and it wouldn't do for AMBU to not see a large blade coming towards them in the corner of their eyes because a mask was getting in the way. In fact, the only thing that the mask did was to get in the way of other people's sight to see his real face, and all of his senses were unhampered by it, which made things very good for him. He turned to inspect himself in the mirror, admiring his new look, trying to see if it was possible to see him at all, which it wasn't. He packed up all of his old clothes into a spare bag, which he kept on him, which he then made matterless, and found the old mask hiding somewhere where he was sure he had checked, and he walked out of the changing rooms. Due to the time spent trying to find the mask, the others were all out before him, and were giving him curious looks about the use of face mask, but the shopkeeper, confused but who knew what the mask meant, continued with outfitting them. He got them all of the weapons to go into the holsters, and gave them a variety of different items in a utility pouch, and they were allowed to pick out certain items that they were interested in, which would benefit their skills. Finally, they were done, and they left via a back exit, as anyone seeing them go and seeing them come out looking like that could put two and two together and end up with information that they didn't want people to know. They all found themselves in a back alley, and all 5 people jumped up to the rooftops, using chakra to jump far and stick to some places and others to not fall through the roofs. "We're going training now," said Kurinai, and receiving 4 nods, they all traveled back to Training Grounds 15, where they began the team-building exercises, not unlike those done at the academy sometimes, but much harder, much more fun, and actually building them up as a team rather than getting them to bicker a lot. And in this one, they actually had to use their abilities and skill while solving the problems, which Shikamaru was responsible for understanding and mentally beating in record. Time. When the 4 hours of team building were finished, more like team building was finished, taking them 4 hours, they were made to start chakra control exercises, i.e., tree running, which Naruto, having done it before, did a different exercise, namely water walking, though doing a load of exercises on top of it, trying to get better control over the vast ocean that was his chakra. Whilst the other three had to do the good old tree running and landing hard on their arses on the first few tries. Shino had come third in the class, Shikamaru came last, though that was just because he had slept through half of it. Inoka had passed high up in her year, and Naruto had come first by a lot. Having been trained from age 3 helped a lot in that, and he had already done the exercise. /0/ After many long hours of chakra training, evaluations, and learning new skills which they hadn't even known existed, they had to make camp for the night, needing 5 different shelters, and with a sensei that was just sitting and reading, being very unhelpful. Well, we all need jobs, said Anoka. Shikamaru, you go find firewood, and no stopping to look up at clouds. Naruto, if you could hunt for mint and fish, while Shino, you go foraging for fruits and stuff, and I'll go and get some fresh water. Naruto, could you create your clones to get wood to build the shelters? No need. I have a much better way of doing it, replied Naruto, smiling reassuringly, and they all went off in their different directions. Naruto headed down to the stream and started using sunbon needles to kill the fish, and a clone would get the fish and throw it out into a large net. He then went off to find meat and came back to the clearing with a large net of fish, a deer slung over his shoulder, and 3 hares in his hand. He dropped them all on the side of the clearing, and clearing his throat, he performed a number of seals until he activated the final one and shouted, Shichuka no Jutsu, 4-pillar building technique. A giant building grew out of the forest floor, though he kept it to 2 stories tall, though with only 1 floor, and the Konoha symbol was carved over the large entrance. Smiling happily, he picked the meat and fish back up and carried them inside the building where they would now be staying at for a while, mentally thanking Keshiro for having taught him that one. He placed all of the meats in the center of the room, where there was a large open fireplace, and waited for the others to be back, using his light sleeping method to pass time. When the others all arrived back at the clearing, they were stunned to see such a huge thing there. Not that Shino let it show on his face, and tentatively stepped inside, finding Naruto sleeping in a chair near the fireplace. He was woken by Shikamaru throwing one of the apples Shino had gathered by the skip load, and Shikamaru placed some of the great amount of firewood that he had gathered inside the open fireplace. Bedrooms are that way, said Naruto, pointing towards 5 different doors. This is the main room, and that side is a large storage room. Told you I had a better way of doing it. Bloody hell, muttered Inoka as she looked around at the building made of the forest. When they finally got themselves collected, they lit the fire with a simple fire jutsu, and Naruto got a bunch of clones to gut the fish and prepare all of the meats and fruits, whilst the 4 of them took a bit of time to act their age, and they shared a jumbo pack of marshmallow which they roasted on the fire. Learning a bit more about each other, Naruto explained about the mask and gave them a brief summary of what the years of his life were like, and they all learned about each other's childhoods and more about them in general. Kunai returned to the clearing an hour later, having gone to a tree to read in peace, and her jaw dropped at the sight, but managed to get inside, and she had soon joined them in finishing off the third pack of marshmallows that Shikamaru had gotten from the village earlier, as marshmallows were one of the only things that weren't troublesome, and secretly, he was addicted to the soft pillows of sugar. They put the marshmallows aside when the real food arrived, and all ate and talked way into the night. /0/ But the next morning, the real training began, and they were dragged out of their beds at dawn, then had to go running 20 miles through swamps where they had to pull a sleepy Shikamaru out of the swamps in quick mud whenever he fell asleep in mid-step, and he was groaning the whole way, making them gag him after 2 miles and pulling him out of various swamps every half mile or so. The training was harder than anything that they had ever had to do, but they went through it uncomplaining, except for one lazy Nara, and they reached the finish line all exhausted. But they were only granted 10 minutes rest before they had to follow Kurenai, who had been reading the whole time. They followed her down to the village, where they were thankfully going indoors, and they soon found themselves inside a large gym. You need to raise your muscle, and this is where you'll be doing it. You are to come here 4 times a week for 2 hours at a time, longer if you particularly want to, but no less, he ended, poking a groaning Shikamaru in the shoulder, who muttered something that sounded a lot like troublesome. She then had to show them how to operate all of the mechanical machines, and then they were let loose onto them. They all made a round of all of the machines to get a go at them, and Naruto was easily out of the 4 the one who was stronger, though he had kind of been using weights that weighed incredible amounts, and he had used the muscle gain rate pill too, though Inoka wasn't that badly off, and Shino had obviously done some sort of physical workout before, though Shikamaru, being as lazy as he was and spending his time playing different strategy games or watching clouds, so he little to no real muscle to speak of, and so was having a hard time of it. They stayed there for 2 hours, which by the end of it, they were tired, but only had an hour for food before commencing sparring with each other, followed by weapons training, which was thankfully a lecture for now, as they all wanted nothing more than to just stay laying down, though unfortunately, they were all tagged with special tags that would shock them awake if they started slipping towards sleep. And they had a demonstration showing how a huge load of weapons worked, the lecture/. Demonstration being given by the owner of the weapons shop where they had been outfitted. The day was mercifully now over, and they were released to go home and just crash down for the night, though with the tags as an alarm clock to wake them all up half an hour before dawn. Naruto trudged back to his apartment, unfortunately having to pay attention as he didn't know the way off by heart, but found his way home in the fading light, but fate had decided that he was to be its new voodoo doll. He entered his apartment sleepily, only placing a foot beyond the threshold before he was shocked out of thoughts of blissful sleep by Naruto. He blinked, cowering slightly as he saw his enraged mother march up to him, looking pissed off. "And when were you going to even ask us what we think of your decision?" She shouted loud enough for him to wonder if his eardrums were going to burst or not. He didn't even get a chance to even start thinking of an answer when she continued. "And why the hell didn't you even tell us anything about it? You signed that bloody contract yesterday without consulting anyone. And then don't even tell us what you did despite having a very good opportunity." Damn, he hated it when she started shouting, but then again, he did kind of deserve it, and he guessed that he really should have asked him about it first, but it seemed like a very good decision to him at the time, and that opinion hadn't changed one bit, despite the heavy punishment that passed for training. Ka-san, he said desperately, trying to stop the tirade before any walls were demolished. What? She snapped angrily, hands on hips and glaring at him dangerously. I. The opportunity wasn't one to be missed. I was chosen specifically for it, and this is a one-off chance. I couldn't say no. I'm sorry for not saying anything, but I kind of forgot, and nothing was certain until everyone else had agreed. He muttered to the ground. Tsunade's expression softened, and Naruto was only able to let out an neck before she hugged the stuffing out of him. I just worry about you. She sniffed. Your chosen career isn't exactly one that is the safest of all jobs, and you're just a genin. Actually, technically a junior ENBU, replied Naruto, which received a confused glare before she realized that he was actually wearing a black robe. And before you start shouting again, it happened today, he said quickly, seeing the emotion flitting across her face, and Tsunade scowled lightly, hugged him tightly again with motherly concern, and poked him off to bed, where Naruto fell asleep instantly from exhaustion, glad that the shouting hadn't been any worse. /0/ The next morning at dawn, all four Jinin/June ANBU met up in the gym for their morning workout, where Naruto handed them all one of the same small white pills that he had used all those years ago, having received permission from Keshiro for his teammates to use them, explain what they did, and all three swallowed them trustingly, and the morning workout began. All three commented on the effectiveness of the pills, thanking him for them, though he just said that it would be best for the team for them to be able to progress far quicker, as it would mean that they would all be able to move on to other things. They met up Kurenai at the training grounds, where she had them do tree running endurance, which would improve their physical and chakra stamina, whilst they also had to dodge kunais thrown at them and have a log strapped to their backs, Shikamaru's one being heavier than he was, but they all had determination to finish and be a proper team, so they all did it, causing friendly rivalry between them to do the exercises quickest of all, and the three progressed far quicker now, and Kurenai was amazed when her training regimes were being done in half of the time predicted, leaving them with much more time for extra training, which they spent a part of on a lecture on Jinjutsu's proper methods and canceling technique, and a generally basic explanation on everything Jinjutsu. They then had a session of ninjutsu by Heikate Kakashi, who arrived on time for once, though Kurenai telling him that it started 3 hours earlier than it did might have had something to do with that. They had a revision session on the different types of ninjutsus with the main four, Kitan, Suidun, Doton, and Futon, and going over the basic Kitan jutsu, as it was the country of fire, and the other countries protected their jutsus closely, though Naruto, as a traveling nin, managed to learn quite a few others. They went over a number of advanced things, until the hour with Kakashi was up, and the silver-haired pervert left to continue supervising his own team, doing boring chores, and getting back to his orange book, though Kurenai thought of it more as an atrocity instead. They all went to Ichiraku's for lunch, where they talked and learned more about Kurenai. They were given the afternoon off to do whatever they wanted, as they had finished the day's exercises and then some, and Naruto decided to go exploring a bit. He went around the village, sightseeing what little there was as a real tourist attraction, which was mainly the Hokage monument, and he spent half an hour just sitting and looking at the head of his father. "I will make you proud of me, Dad." Flames of youth. Naruto's feet carried him in no particular direction as he was lost deep in thought, and soon found himself at what appeared to be a different training grounds, and was about to turn back when he heard sounds of combat coming from one area, and he went over to it via the trees around the grounds, moving with silence that only came from years of practice. He soon found himself perched on a branch watching a kid with massive eyebrows repetitively punch a log, counting upwards as he did so, and had bloody bandages around his knuckles, and had the faintest of winces cross his face every time he hit the log, and quite rightly, the kid, who was actually years elder, was up to 423. Naruto dropped down behind him, and the kid at least had the senses to notice him and turn around quickly, instinctively assuming a defensive position. Naruto smiled, and the kid stood up straight again. "Why do you keep hitting a log over and over again?" asked Naruto curiously. "Because it is my goal to show that geniuses can be beaten by a genius of hard work," replied the caterpillar eyebrows kid. "By beating your knuckles to death?" asked Naruto sarcastically. The kid looked down at the ground. "Hey, don't beat yourself up about it. Just wear gloves or something to soften the blow on yourself," said Naruto, and carefully unwrapped the bandages from the kid's knuckles. And remembering his medical lessons with Kasan, he passed the green chakra over the knuckles, which all healed up like an accelerated movie, and did the same to the second hand. "Here," he said, and handed him the spare gloves he had in his back pocket, which were the ANBU design ones. The kid stared at the gloves before beaming and putting them on. "What's your name?" asked Naruto. "Rock Lee," he replied, and Naruto introduced himself, shaking Lee's hand. Naruto sensed something whilst in contact with Lee and said, "You have a very low chakra output." Lee looked down again. "That's why I want to be a taijutsu master, just like Guy Sensei, because I cannot use chakra without hurting myself badly. The doctor said that I only produce enough to survive," he said sadly. "Well, if you've got Konoha's beautiful green beast as your sensei, and you would go to these lengths to get better, then you'll definitely get somewhere. But why don't you just go to a gym or something?" Lee shrugged. "Not the same, really, though I understand the idea of it." "You use weights?" asked Naruto, having noticed the slight strain whenever Lee moved, and Lee nodded. "Good start. I use them too, and they give a great advantage in a very hard fight. I've never once fully removed mine in all of the years that I've had them." His watch alarm started beeping, and Naruto cursed softly. "Sorry, I've got to go." Lee nodded, showing that it was fine, and thanked him once again for the gloves before Naruto disappeared as swiftly as he had arrived. He had set the alarm to tell him when he had to go, as the Hokage had asked to see him. He arrived at the tower soon, and had to wait a few minutes for the previous meeting that the Hokage had to finish, and he was then allowed through to where the Hokage was waiting for him. "You wish to see me, Hokage-sama?" "Please don't use sama. It makes me feel older than I already am," said the Hokage softly, smiling. "Very well. You wish to see me, Hokage Ajisen, old man." The Hokage laughed merrily and offered a seat, which Naruto took. "I just wanted to see how you were doing, how you're fitting in and all that." "Well, training is a little different to what I had imagined before coming, though that is to be expected with the special arrangement. I actually wanted to ask, why was this special team created only now?" Probably because the skills of different people in your team all fit together, and your turning up helped it, though also mainly because I thought that it would be a good idea to have one. All four of you are all very talented in your areas, and so far you appear to work very well as a team. You practically are A and BU, though, without having to do missions until you have reached a certain point in your training, and then you will only have to do a few derang missions, and you don't have AMBU duties, but you're trained as one, and in time, you will become a proper team, ready to receive dangerous missions. You have already got experience in that field, whilst the others don't, and you have been training for far longer, which is why you have been made team captain. The team's main purpose is assassination, which means that you will all need to be ready for it. Okay, but still, why did you want me here? I just wanted to discuss a few things, see how you were getting on with your teammates, how you like the village, so on and so forth. I like my teammates, despite Shino being incredibly mute, Shikamaru being incredibly lazy, and Inoka sometimes nagging us, but I still like them. The village is nice and homey, though I haven't seen all of it yet, but I plan to sooner or later. Great. So how's your training going, personally wise? It's actually fun, and we're learning a lot. But I personally need to get better chakra control, which is incredibly hard as my chakra is rather hyperactive. The Hokage chuckled. Yes, your father had the same problem, but that's because of the Kazame blood. For some unknown reason, all Kazame chakra are much more hyperactive, have been known for massive chakra reserves, love of ramen, and have all found that the really hard jutsus are easier to get than the smaller ones. And Jinjutsu is mainly useless for Kazames, though your mother's side was renowned for Jinjutsu and great chakra control. So a mix of the two together means that you still have some hope in the field. Naruto nodded, always glad to know more about his parents. By the way, thanks a lot for the mask. My pleasure, Naruto. Now I believe that you needed chakra control exercises to be getting on with. Naruto nodded, smiling, and took his customary leave via the window and headed toward the training grounds where a large body of water was marked, though stopped off at the library on his way there, finding chakra control exercise scrolls there, which he was able to take out without any sort of card or anything just because of the ANBU status thing, and his mask was unique, which was identification enough. He chose one of the scrolls at random, cursing as it turned out to be a difficult one, and included the water, which was needed in a number of chakra control exercises, exactly why he had chosen that area in particular. He was there 5 minutes later, rolling up the scroll and placing it in a waterproof scroll pouch, and gathering chakra in his feet, he walked out to the middle of the large lake. He then performed a few quick hand seals and blew downwards. Every part of the water that was touched by the breath turned to ice. Ice was much harder to walk on with chakra, as you had to create chakra anchors to hold you in place. He then punched the foot-thick ice, which snapped, and whilst a large piece of ice dipped at one end and rose at the other, he froze the water in the hole he had created, strengthening it with chakra, and he now had an icy slope to use. He took a deep breath and started molding his chakra to form a feeble anchor, which didn't hold him up at all, and he slid down the short length of ice again. He did it like tree running, using a kunai to scratch where he had gotten to and taking it a run. The next 7 hours found him there, trying again and again to go higher and higher to beat his previous record, which slowly made its way further and further up the ice slope, which stayed frozen even under the glaring sun. Naruto might have lousy chakra control, which was slowly improving, but what he did have was stamina and determination, which are what kept him going long after most would have given up or crumpled in exhaustion. But he stuck it out until the end, and it took him a full 7 hours to get to the end of the ice slope. The next morning, they all went to the gym again, where they all did their separate physical exercises, which was followed with stealth training, in which they learned all about effective camouflage methods and how to quickly apply that in different conditions and areas. They were made to crawl through mud to get them coated in mud, and they then had to try to sneak up on Kurenai, and the mud was also there to protect them against the fireballs she threw when she spotted one of them. By the end of the long but fun 4 hours, none of them had managed to get her, though Shikamaru had managed to get within 5 feet before she had sensed him and had hit him square in the chest with a fireball, making the mud turn into a hard clay-like substance, which was a pain to get rid of. After that, they had a quiet break for food, and then they were set upon by training dummies, and had to protect themselves from the dummies, which were set on Chunin level to give them a real challenge, and they received a real beating before they had all managed to get rid of their own dummies with combined efforts. They were then taught minor healing, which helped a lot with the bruising, and they were also given ice packs to help with the swelling in some areas. After that, they had another long break, as they were having another demonstration, this one about different escape methods, which they all soaked up like dry sponges to water, and the next task was to demonstrate what they had just learned, combining it with the camouflage lesson they'd had earlier. These lessons were all tiring, but instructive and fun, and the next activity was to couple camouflage and stealth with target practice, with a Kurenai clone as the target, and they were given several simulations using Kurenai's Genjutsu, and they had to inspect the scenery and point out where good advantage points would be, though, without Kurenai seeing, and they then had to put that plan into action. Kurenai had to walk down a Genjutsu dirt path, waiting to see what the 4 Genins would do. When she came to one of the last places where she would imagine them attacking, therefore letting her guard down a bit, they attacked. Before she knew what was what, 2 hands shot up out of the ground and grabbed her ankles, keeping her in place and momentarily shocked. A flashbang went off away in front of her, which was odd, as it was too far away to be useful. But this flashbang was actually a cross between a flashbang and a flare, so the strong light lasted a while. Before she could do anything, her arms moved of their own accord, and she understood. The flare had been to lengthen Shikamaru's shadow to bind her in place, whilst Inoka used her Shintenshin to boot her out of her own mind, which had been a large part of the Ino Shikacho team, and this team was only missing an Akimichi for that. But the idea was the same. The flare had been a creation of Naruto's, and it was probably Shino who had grabbed her ankles. But no, that had just been a Naruto clone, and Shino was actually sucking out her chakra, causing the Genjutsu to flicker and fail. She got up shakily, congratulating them for a good plan, which unsurprisingly had come from Shikamaru's intellectual genius. She accepted the offered chakra pill and felt her strength return to her before starting them on their next training, which was swear-in water training, and they all had to learn to swim properly, which was something that Shino wasn't able to do as he had holes for his bugs, which were troublesome, to use Shikamaru's word. But the Bugman picked it up pretty quickly, using his own swimming stroke, which he dubbed the water beetle stroke, and of course, used a water beetle as inspiration, and he conversed with a water beetle, learning more about water bugs. They then had to be able to move around under the surface of the water using rebreathers, which, as far as they understood, were like gas masks, which purified the air that you blew out, allowing you to draw the oxygen blown out. And it allowed them to stay under for a whole 10 minutes for those with large lung capacities, reusing their oxygen, instead of using hollowed out bamboo canes as snorkels like other Genin teams did. They then had to learn how to fight in and on top of the water and how to use the water to your advantage. All things to do with water training, and they spent their free time splashing around in the water and taking time to be kids. But that evening, they had to begin night training, which meant navigating in the dark. And she taught them a simple but effective ANBU trick, which she had learned from a friend, which sent out a small and invisible chakra pulse, which acted like echolocation, telling them whenever they were about to walk into trees. They were let loose again at past midnight, though the next morning they would start at 7 to make up for it. The next day once again passed in a flurry of different activities which were very educational. And they would also be visited by various ANBU people who helped with the areas that Kurenai was not able to do, and they learned how to communicate through sign language, a must for ANBU. And they also learned code language too, which was less used but very useful to know. The first week suddenly found itself over, surprising them all, and suddenly the training went up a notch with a schedule which had been changed around a bit. Stealth had now become a large game of hide and seek, but the hardest bit was that they had to wear reflective and very noticeable orange vests on top of the robes, which just made it much harder, and they had some of ANBU's best trackers after them, who would later also teach them how to successfully track each other afterwards, using any small disturbance or broken twig to guide them. And it was in this that Shikamaru excelled, where he lacked in the physical side of things, though he was far from scrawny now, and all four Genin now wore weights to get stronger. In teamwork, they had also progressed beyond recognition, and they could operate in complete silence and could sometimes communicate just with their eyes. As avid inventor, Naruto had of course created several creations to benefit the team, including, and these had taken a lot of free time, a pair of contact lenses which would have several options, mainly infrared, heat sensor, ultraviolet sight, and all other sights which weren't plain sight, and helped them loads during night training, of which they did a bit of every night, even when not necessary. But now that the first week was over, it was time for the new schedule to begin, and they were meeting their new taijutsu sensei in the mornings to do exercises with him instead of the gym. And that was where their sanity went into decline. Monday, 5:02 a.m. They all went together towards Training Grounds 18, where they would be starting the first day with their new taijutsu sensei, Konoha's self-proclaimed beautiful green beast, the one and only Mato guy. When they arrived, they saw their new instructor already there and warming up with someone who Naruto recognized as Lee once he got past the initial impression that it was Guy's clone. Both had bobbed haircuts, massive and very prominent eyebrows, matching green spandexes and bright orange leg warmers with weights beneath them. Welcome, passionate students, to your new taijutsu lesson, directed by myself, Mato Guy, and my beautiful assistant Lee. I am here today to teach you the beautiful art of taijutsu, the art of unarmed combat. Now copy the starting exercises that we are doing, and then we will be teaching your youthful spirits a special style, he bellowed, making all four Genin wince. Told you that you would need earplugs. mutter Inoka, and the three boys all muttered their thanks. But either Guy and Lee hadn't heard it or had just ignored it, as both were yelling everything at the top of their lungs. But they followed the instructions anyway. They were then shown the starting steps to the Impact Taijutsu style, which was the cousin of the Iron Fist style, as both used strength for it, though both worked better the more speed you could get. From their first impressions of Guy and Lee, at least whilst put together in the same 100 meters of each other, was weirdos, but they knew what they were doing. But the two identical weirdos truly were an odd pair, and would sometimes burst into tears with each other at the drop of a hat, and then go into the nice guy pose, which rendered all flashbangs obsolete in comparison. And their wacky ways left Inoka giggling for an hour afterwards, whilst the three boys were left winding at the thought of those spandexes and how you would have to have already been castrated if you didn't want the green leotard-like costumes to do it for you. Their next training was stealth and tracking, which was taught by the sickly Gekahei, and they went over what they already knew and how to use stealth to fight, which was incredibly hard, but they managed it using only the main 3 jutsus needed to graduate: the Bunshin, Hinge, and Korimi, like by using Korimi with a Bunshin at the last moment, and attacking as someone else at random moments, in Naruto, helping them with Hinge Kage Bunshins. And they also had fun using Shuriken. Bunshin making illusionary weaponry. And there was also the fact that there were 4 of them against 1, giving them an advantage no matter what, especially with their teamwork. Kakashi was obviously late, so they used that time, like previously planned, as a Jinjutsu lesson from Kurenai, who taught them a Jinjutsu that dulled the opponent's senses and also how to better detect the actual use of Jinjutsus, which was usually done by feeling that something was off about something, but identifying them was much harder. So they were usually just countered by mustering an amount of chakra that surpassed the amount used to create it in the first place, and placed in the Seal 4 Kai, which was the universal Jinjutsu cancellation method. They had Kakashi when he turned up for hours late, and they all had to show which ninjutsus they were able to do, and he then taught them all one which none of them knew, though he was slightly cautious because he had been sure that Naruto was holding back. He taught them all a Suetun technique, which would make a water shield, which was useful against fire attacks, but they didn't get close to the size of his own. He then gave them another technique, which created a wave of water out of nowhere to attack their opponents as homework, and they moved on to a different lesson, which was learning how to sense chakra, which would mean that it would be very hard to be sneaked up on and easier to track somebody in a crowd. But they weren't allowed to leave yet, even past nightfall, as they had to continue night training, though this one was different, as they had rubber kunais thrown at them from all directions, covered in red paint, marking how many times they had been hit. Then they had to sleep in the forest again, though they weren't allowed to use the forest building like last time. So instead, they strung hammocks up high up in the trees near one another, and all fell asleep as quickly as possible, so that they could sleep as long as possible until dawn next morning, when they'd have to face Guy again. YOSH, the flames of youth burns strongly in all of you today, my passionate students. For people groaned whilst the 5th cheered, so no need to say who they were. They were still amazed at the volume which Guy could achieve, and he'd make a brilliant alarm clock, not only because he would wake you up immediately with that, but you would want to be as far away from him as possible, so you would get up damn quick to escape him. And of course, that set Naruto thinking and smirking. They followed Guy's tutelage in taijutsu, getting better at the impact style, which was very simple, but much better than the academy taijutsu that everyone but Naruto knew, which was just defensive. They had to do all of Guy's mad trainings, which were just plain odd for some of them. But being a taijutsu master, he must have done something correctly, and they followed it willingly, though, with earplugs or a CD player in Naruto's case. After the morning workout with Guy, they had to play hide and seek with ANBU members whom they only knew as Trigger and Dark Crow. And after 2 hours of constantly trying to hide, even inside a swamp, but they were always found within 10 minutes, but that time was slowly improving, and then they had to do it the other way around with them, trying to find the two ANBU's 20 clones, which proved to be a challenge. Actually, it turned out that the original schedule had been binned due to clashing schedules, and they just did a number of things every day randomly, which also meant that they had to be prepared for it. After lunch, they had the chronically late pervert Jounin Kakashi, who was taking a break from listening to his own teams bickering and made them do the legendary Kanoa Bell test. They all understood the point of the test, and they would have worked together to get the bells in any case. Shino attacked, which is bugs from afar, making Kakashi have to dodge them instead of burning them all to a crisp, as that would be a very bad move with the Aburame around. The Four's main tactic was for Shino to start weakening their opponent without them noticing. Then Naruto would do the main damage either close combat or from afar, weakening them down completely until they would struggle less against Shikamaru's shadow. And then Inoka would take over their mind and make them jump off a cliff or something, though they could also do it with Naruto damaging them, using the target for infiltration purposes. Naruto was also getting used to being the team captain, which the others all said that he was the best choice for, and he would be the primary commander in missions. They were given a few D-rank missions, ones that actually had to use a tiny smidgen of skill. So no painting houses, but it did mean that they had to catch that bloody cat Tora about 10 times so far, and had the scratches to prove it, and had eventually just gotten annoyed, and Naruto had shot it with a tranquilizer to get it to come along, without nearly scratching their faces off. They were also given mock missions, which meant that they had to go through a forest at night to steal a scroll guarded by no less than 10 clones, and leave again without being hit by a single red paint-coated rubber kunai as they went along. And they dispatched all clones as quickly as possible, grabbing the scroll and leaving before backup arrived, which was on a 2-minute countdown from the start of the assault on the clones. They were slowly progressing from getting through it 30 of the time, and were now aiming towards 40 as a milestone. However bad 40 was, but it was only training, and that sort of mission would have been B rank at the least. So 40 for Genin was very good. The first week came and passed pretty quickly for them, and by the end of it their heads felt like they would explode from all of the extra information, and were all finally heading home after a week in the forest, having a day off for their surprisingly good progress. "Kurenai, your report?" asked the Hokage. Kurenai cleared her throat. Their teamwork is advancing incredibly quickly, and they are using their skills alongside each other's. Shikamaru is becoming less lazy and actually has some ambition to do well, and is practicing his Kage main now. Shino is opening up more, though still doesn't speak much, and is using more of the wildlife around him to help, instead of just the Kekii bugs inside him. Inoka is showing good progress, and has apparently nearly finished a technique that she has been making for over a year now. Naruto is far more confident as team captain now, and the others look to him for instruction when they're on the field, and his skills are extraordinary. But I get the impression that he is holding back on a number of much more powerful skills. I'm not surprised. Really, he has been trained by a hunter Neen who was renowned for his power and effectiveness in the field, along with his tenant and his bloodlines. Kurenai nodded, frowning slightly, but let it drop as the Hokage would have a good reason to not tell her something. Here are the comments their assorted instructors have made about their progress and skills in the different areas, she said, handing over a thick folder, which the Hokage took, nodding. I gave them a day off to do whatever they want, which will probably end up being more training, but this week will be more relaxed, learning their family's techniques better and such more personalized training, and for them to train what they feel that they need to train. The Hokage nodded in agreement of the idea. They talked for a bit longer, and she left the Hokage to read the folder alone, Bloodlines. It was in the process of beating a log to pieces Lee style that Naruto found his thoughts wandering across many things as he practiced monotonously. He found this happening quite a lot. He realized as he switched from fist to his scaled-down Nodachi, slashing at the log repetitively, for 1,000 slashes in every direction, which was the grueling training that Keshiro was making him do. They had been told that they had a week off from group training to focus on their family abilities, and Keshiro had started getting used to hearing Naruto swearing loudly at his brother for being an irritating, slave-driving twat again. "Kesh," said Naruto, "do I actually have any bloodline abilities?" he asked, surprising Keshiro. "To be honest, I haven't got a clue, but I would assume that you have, seeing as the Kazame family is one of the top 3 families in Konoha among the Hyugas and Uchihas, though Kazames are the leading clan, despite numbers which are even lower than the Uchihas. But in essentials, you are Konoha royalty." "Really?" "Yeah. Well, the Shandame, your distant ancestor who is the blood link between you and Bachan, did found the village, and the Kazame line passed down from his brother, the Nine Dame, rather than to Sanada Bachan's family, as the blood passes along the Hokages. And the Nine Dame became the head of the family when he took up the role of Hokage, which was before the Shandame settled down and married. Hokage Jisuma might know something." "All right, I'll go and ask him then." "Oh no, you're not going anywhere until you've finished this," said Keshiro seriously, sporting a Cheshire cat smile that showed an abnormal amount of teeth, all of them very pointy. It was in the same category as the puppy eyes no jutsu, known as one of the most effective jutsus to use for persuading someone without physical force, though this one was slightly more on the opposite side of the spectrum. "Annoying git," Naruto grumbled, getting back to slashing the log repetitively. "Naruto, thank you for saving me from this dead boring paperwork," said the Hokage, who looked very old at that moment, and seeing the pile of papers and ledgers on his desk, Naruto wasn't surprised at all. "Not a social visit, unfortunately," said Naruto sadly. "I was just sort of wondering if you would know if there was anything left of my parents around somewhere." The Hokage struck a thoughtful pose before his face brightened up, along with a look of slight shame on his face. "Forgive me for forgetting all about it," he said guiltily. "The Kazame Manor is still standing perfectly, not having been seen since Erishur sealed it before going off to the QB. Yes, it's just behind Training Grounds 46, which are private ones if you wish to use them for your own personal training." Naruto nodded gratefully and quickly left via his favorite exit way, the window, and he darted across rooftops towards Training Area 46, which was near the outskirts of Konoha. The training grounds there looked untouched for many years, and the whole place was seriously overgrown, since nobody had ever needed to use it. Therefore, it had gone unattended. Kesshiro had come along with Naruto, having seen him dash over rooftops very shortly after having entered the Hokage's tower, so had tagged along with him. "Okay, it should be around here somewhere," said Kesshiro in a deadpan voice as they looked at the training grounds and the 12 miles of forest that sprang out everywhere in 3 directions. "Any shortcut methods that we can try?" asked Naruto hopefully. "I dunno. You're the inventions freak here," replied Kesshiro helpfully. "Of course, I had momentarily forgotten that you were, after all, just a lazy, useless sack of horse dash." Okay. Time for that later," said Kesshiro, his arm around Naruto's shoulders, looping back around and covering Naruto's mouth tightly. "But for now, we have to find a damn house in a massive forest. Shouldn't be too far into the forest, and it's probably got Jinjutsus all around, since Jinjutsus usually attack the site first and foremost. Then we can't rely on what we see as evidence. That means that we have to use smell, which is near impossible seeing as we have no idea what smell we are looking for. And the last time I checked, an abandoned house doesn't make noises. Nor would sense of taste be any good, unless it's a gingerbread house. Okay, so that leaves touch. So we're essentially back to square one," replied Naruto. "Seems like it," agreed his brother. "Though if we just find the Jinjutsu, then head for the area in which it is coming from." "Great plan, except for one minor detail. Which is, they would undoubtedly have wards that block against seeing or even sensing the chakra used, or Hyugas could prance around inside the place all they want, or claim it as their own. No, it has to have a bit more than just that protecting it," replied Naruto wisely. "Smart ass," was all that Kesshiro said in reply to that. "So the good old-fashioned search method. Seek and explode." "Sure," replied Kesshiro, and both began molding chakra, causing 2 near-identical seals to appear on their stomachs, though they had long ago gotten used to that, and a few seconds later, simultaneous cries of Tijukiga Bunshin was heard, and 600 clones stood in the place. Seek and Explode was the nickname they had come up for simply sending out a horde of Kage Bunshins to find something generally big by running slap bang into them and exploding, though they kept 100 of them to get the training area back under control, whilst they sat in a tree talking about what had happened so far in the village, not having had much a chance to talk about things recently. It was after 2 hours of Kage Bunshins searching the whole forest that they finally decided that Seek and Explode wasn't going to work, especially with the Jinjutsu that made you walk in circles without realizing it over the place. They had gotten rid of that Jinjutsu the easiest way for them, which was to let off a pulse of chakra, which short-circuited the Jinjutsu, causing it to fail. Unfortunately, this got them only a tiny bit closer to what they were looking for, but that was soon corrected. Naruto used the echolocation device that he had created for his team, and he had been asked to let the rest of ANBU make use of it, which he gladly agreed to, and he sent out repetitive sound waves from it whilst they walked, whilst using his eyes to compare what he saw and what was actually there. When they finally found the location of the place, they still couldn't see or even touch it due to the amount of protections on the manor. "Well, this is a bugger," muttered Keshiro, staring at the very large blank area where they knew the house to be. "Why do I get the feeling that the answer is in fact incredibly simple?" asked Naruto tiredly. "Probably because it is," replied Keshiro, picking up Naruto quickly and threw him bodily into that space. Naruto collided rather painfully with something big and far more solid than his face. And like a ripple moving in a pond, stone was being uncovered for where Naruto had hit. Very quickly, the wall surrounding the house was uncovered, and they then started seeing what was undoubtedly the Kazame Manor, which definitely rivaled anything those Hyuga pricks might have. "Holy shit!" finished Kesaro loudly, both of them grinning madly. The Kazame property was absolutely massive, and that must have gotten a master Jinjutsu user to ward the place, seeing how well it had been hidden. "Bloody hell, this place looks expensive." "I'm liking it already," said Naruto happily. "It took you this long." "Shut up." The inside of the house was even bigger than it appeared on the outside, with over 50 rooms that were all already made for the next person to enter. Naruto realized why everyone called his dad a seal's genius, seeing just how many jutsu tags have been used in the place. There were seals all over the place, hidden, keeping everything clean, and explained why there wasn't a layer of dust anywhere. The training grounds outside the house that the clones had tidied up was nothing in comparison to the private training area at the back of the house. It was just one long assault course which looked painfully hard and made him wince just by looking at it. Inside, there was a whole room dedicated to a forge where weapons could be made, and all of the equipment was ready and waiting for him. The kitchen was stocked fully, with seals for preservation all inside the fridge, which they raided for food quickly, and went back outside to observe the grounds after finishing. The whole wood surrounding the house was private property, though they were the only ones to know that, and didn't really mind either. After touring the extensive grounds, they went back inside and visited the lounge, which was big enough and filled with enough things to be sure that Sundays would never be boring. But when they came back in, a sealed envelope waited for Naruto on the coffee table. He picked it up, sat back in one of the excruciatingly comfortable chairs, and started reading. "My son, if you are reading this, then it means that everything went right, and the QB has been sealed inside of you with my soul, and you're left parentless since your mother died at childbirth, as she had refused to not fight whilst heavily pregnant. For this I am sorry, but I hope that you have found somebody who cares deeply about you, and treasure them always." On a different and hopefully lighter note, the wards of the house are now tied to you, and only those who you personally invite and will be able to find it. As my son, I expect you to learn all of my trademark jutsus and make a whole slew of your own, whilst pranking everyone to death. Find a man called Jiraiya, who is probably near the southern Konoha hot springs, where he'll be researching for the umpteenth book in his series of filth, or the bathhouses for the same reason. Despite his outwards appearance, he is a very powerful ninja and one of the three Sannin. Naruto suddenly remembered where he recognized Jiraiya's name from. Kasan had often talked of that bloody pervert Jiraiya. He was also my sensei and is the only person alive who knows the Rasengan, one of my two main moves, and incredibly powerful. The other, the Horatian, is mainly about seals, which is a subject that you will have a natural affinity to and can be found in the family library. I hope that you have mastered all of the moves on the scrolls that were given to you from the ones that I left for you to learn. Now, on to the good part, our bloodlines. Yes, that is bloodlines, plural, as every Kazame has the family bloodline and a product of another bloodline. The standard Kazame bloodline is being able to stand incredibly high speeds, which is what allowed me to create and use the Horatian, as the speeds would kill a normal human. In fact, we are able to sustain physical and mental odds that would beat most humans, and we are able to open most of the chakra gates without suffering after effects. The second bloodline is very different. It is different because it affects every Kazame differently and is highly unpredictable. That is why it will give you an ability which only you will ever have. It was previously impossible to know what that ability was until you accidentally used it and recognized it for what it was. But given my ultimate prowess at sealing, no showing off, well, maybe a bit, I created a way of finding out, though I have absolutely no idea if it will work for a Kazame who doesn't know what theirs is already. Well, give it a try and find out. Another thing we are famed for is having a photographic memory and ability at adapting to all sorts of situations. Our excellent memory allows us to do basically the same as those pompous Uchihas. One look and we can copy the jutsu because we remember everything we see of someone doing the jutsu, so we can remember the hand seals. The only thing we don't have is red eyes and a record for insanity and spontaneous bloodlust. But you also have your mother's bloodline. The Uzumakis were well known and named the Uzumaki Hunters due to all being in the hunting profession. It is less of a bloodline limit and more of inherited natural talent in taijutsu, ninjutsu, Kenjutsu, and Bojutsu, though I am sorry to say that my side of the family buggered up her Jinjutsu indefinitely, since we all have a condition known as chakra chaos, where our chakra is highly unstable and makes it so that we are unable to go very far in healing and Jinjutsus. You can find the instructions of the Uzumaki Kenjutsu style in a library, along with information about absolutely everything, as the library is more extensive than the Hokage's archives, containing secrets about clans that the Council of Old Farts got rid of in the Hokage's archives, not wanting their clan's dirty secrets being known. Learn them and use it as blackmail material. Even a Hokage can be nasty sometimes, and don't underestimate Sandaime. He might be ancient, but he's also Hokage for a reason. Finally, I leave a message saying that I hope for the best in your future and find a nice girl that you love and marry her and protect her with everything you can before making me a lot of grandchildren who can appreciate my legacy like starstruck grandchildren do. Sorry, got away with myself there. But seriously, live life to the fullest and make me proud, and my last words of advice is simply, don't see the face of an angry Medinin's ire. All my love, your father, Kazame Erasure, Yondaime Hokage. Naruto smiled, wiping away the tears that had run down his face upon reading the letter from his father. He'd never before gotten a letter from his father which told him this much. The only actual letter he'd gotten apart from the instructions to the scrolls was a short letter that basically told him who his father was and a short explanation on his family. But he had been spared of the long letter due to his age. Keshiro put an arm around his younger brother comfortingly, whilst Kit nuzzled his ear sympathetically. They stayed like that for a number of minutes before Naruto wiped away the remainder of his tears, and his expression of happiness and comfort was replaced by one of determination, which made Keshiro smile even more, knowing that whatever happened now would just spell even bigger trouble for the enemy, and Naruto predictably headed for the library. Naruto headed straight for the library, remembering that he had seen a sign on a door that marked the library. And when he found it, he found himself on a balcony 2 floors up, judging by how far down the floor was when he leaned over the railed edge. Walkways ran alongside the colossal bookcases on all 3 floors of library, and there had to be millions of books and scrolls in there, all about something or the other. He had soon located the scrolls that he wanted, as unlike stereotypical huge libraries, this one was far more modern, and his family's use of seals meant that you only had to think of a book and it would come to the desk on the ground floor of the library, and the rest was just for storing the books and browsing. He sat at the desk, poring over several books, amazed by the amount of information in the place, and made sure that he would put it to good use. And he had started off by finding out how to find out his power with his father's untested system. But it unfortunately hadn't worked, and he was currently looking up books on sealing. He knew basic sealing, as Keshiro had made sure that he was at least basically versed in everything to round off his skills, and Naruto had really enjoyed sealing, as it helped a lot in his pranks and inventions. But this was much more advanced sealing, and he was loving every moment that he was learning. It turned out that the working area was also used for experimenting, which he found dead useful, and he got out the dreaded red leather-bound journal that he kept on him all of the time. It was the dreaded journal because in it contained all of Naruto's ideas and theories, along with the finished products of everything. He had managed to create a seal a while ago, which allowed him to have practically unlimited space in it, and he had filled up a good portion of that unlimited space. The security on it was nothing short of impossible, and rightly so, seeing how much time he'd spent working on it. Everything used on and in the book was all his own creations, which were numerous, and there were about 100 times more ideas in it that hadn't been published than ones that had. He had many ideas which were rather optimistic, downright ludicrous, smart, and works of a genius mind which has a knack for inventing. Within its pages also lay the plans for his longest unfinished project, which was the most genius of the lot, and theoretically would work, but as theoretically often gave way to disaster and an infuriated brother when paint was slightly more permanent in hair than he'd planned. Using the book he was currently holding, he had very shortly created a jutsu tag, which would self-combust and stay alight for 3 hours, and was ignited by a wireless thread of chakra, if thread can be wireless, which it can't. Oh well. He then worked on a second jutsu tag, which recreated the effects of a specific jutsu, and recorded down the exact kanjis on the tag using a scanning tag that he had made especially for it after one unmentioned mishap a few years back, and sorted them away for later use. He grabbed a few more books, looking for a jutsu that he had seen mentioned in one of the books which sounded fascinating and useful, but to his greatest annoyance, he couldn't find it in the immediate vicinity. You could also ask the millennial, brilliantly knowledgeable fox that resides inside of you. QB, how about a bit of help? I'm not sure, now that you've hurt my feelings. I'm not sure if I do want to help anymore. Come on, I'll get you some chewy treats if you do. Don't mock me. Hey, you're the one who tore apart that packet a few days ago and felt sick because you ate the whole packet, including the wrapping. QB grumbled loudly in his head before saying, "Fine, I'll help you." The technique is known as the Chi Bun Shin, blood clone apparently. Correct me if I'm wrong technique, which was used a lot as personal slaves in the days of yore. But it was then looked down upon because people use it to fake their own deaths, and far more than registered Nookinins were running around. So how do I do it? Wipe a streak of your blood onto a firm surface like you would for the summoning. Then perform the following seals, he said, showing Naruto a bunch of seals in his mind, which Naruto immediately memorized. And that's pretty much it, though I would suggest trying to learn it with only one hand seal like the Kage Bunshin. These clones are also incredibly useful because what they learn and remember, you learn and remember, which makes them ideal for scouting, as they don't have to report back to you. And of course, it makes them great for doing boring tasks. Not to mention that they die like a real body and don't disappear in a puff of chakra. Naruto nodded to himself before trying out the technique and got nothing. You need more chakra than for a Kage Bunshin, as these have to take a permanently solid form. You're basically creating a human body, you know. Naruto nodded again and tried the technique, pushing about 10 times more chakra into the blood mark that he'd made on the floor like QB had told him to, and this time the blood seemed to expand greatly before rising upwards and fast taking shape. It formed a red clone of Naruto and then changed colors to match its creator and stood there stock still, looking almost catatonic. "Thanks, Q," thought Naruto gratefully. "No problem, kidling. Just remember who's the best around here." Naruto rolled his eyes and set the blood clone to work through the mental link that now bound them. And he received information unconsciously all of the time as the clone read, and he went about creating a load more clones, thankful for his massive chakra reserves that were over 100 times bigger than what they were when he first began training, and back then he had the chakra capacity of a high chunin, even at age 3. This now meant that he beat the Hokage in terms of chakra capacity, and without even taking into account QB's endless chakra. He would basically never run out of chakra, unless he fought some hugely epic battle with an incredibly powerful enemy, and then he would use QB's chakra, which was something he had learned to do early on in his life, as he needed it for summoning the more powerful kitsunes. He created more blood clones, which went off to research whatever he wanted to find out about, and he soon had about 30 clones researching, making him decide that he should go and look up his bloodlines himself, and set off to do just that. The Uzumaki hunters are feared warriors all around the shinobi continent, for a number of reasons. First of all, we are all hunter-nin of the highest class, starting the profession at a young age, and we have a pull towards that job that will only grow stronger as we grow older. We are also feared for our record. We hold all of the records associated with hunter-nins, including Uzumaki Hirashi's most Nookinins defeated in an hour, with a record-breaking 27, and all of them were B rank or above. But another of our most notable facts is that we make most of what we use ourselves, and we have created a number of new weapons, and we were even the ones who created the kunai, which is why the family fortune, which sits untouched in the Konoha Bank's deepest vaults, is so large and constantly expanding. Sadly, we are also dying out thanks to the disease epidemic, which has already claimed the lives of so many shinobi here in the hidden village of shadows. Naruto's eyes widened. Hidden Village of Shadows? What the hell was that? Even I've never heard of it, contributed QB, surprising Naruto, seeing as the fox was bloody ancient and knew a hell of a lot of obscure things. We have always been seen as demons for the ease with which we take out Nookenins, and how much we are unbothered by the sight of blood. And I suppose that it is true that we do have demonic blood going back about 50 generations, but the explanation we fear is much more than that. We do not have long left, and will therefore not be able to find out before most of our lives are claimed by this disease that will claim so many more lives. The Hidden Village of Shadows is probably the only village on the Shinobi continent which is truly hidden, being completely self-sufficient. We must have demonic blood in our veins, though, as this village only allows those with demonic blood to enter, and all humans die instantly. And it is said that this village was built as a refuge from the prejudicial humans that outnumber us so greatly. We also do not know much about our own bloodline, and we ask whoever is reading this to unlock the secrets behind our bloodline, as by the time this is read and is only readable by a member of the bloodline, we will be gone. Today I have sent away my youngest daughter, Yuko, to continue the bloodline. Luckily for us, the Uzumaki genes are heavily superior, not in a boastful way, and will never be thinned by the introduction of outside blood, though it will mean that it cancels out the secondary bloodline, passing only ours down through the generations. This is once again a result of the demonic blood, which is a long ago used defensive technique for survival of a demonic clan, and I just hope that the clan will still live on today. On my luck, Uzumaki Yoni. Naruto finished the letter that had come to the table when he had asked the library for the Uzumaki bloodline, and felt himself more puzzled than he was before he had read the letter. Great, more mysteries to uncover. Naruto had left his blood clones in the library and left it, and soon located Keshiro appreciating the fine sword craftsmanship of the Uzumakis against a set of training dummies. Naruto soon joined him, and using one of the swords that had kanjis running down the side of the blade to make it indestructible, they had a sword fight that sent clashing noises reverberating around the room for about an hour or so. When they were done trying out different weapons, which took a further 2 hours, they went back outside to set up the training grounds just outside the house, leaving the private one at the back for another time, as it was designed specifically to train the Uzumaki and Kazame abilities. The two clans had been merged together when the Uzumaki blood had failed to overwrite the powerful Kazame blood, and since the two families only had a few members in each at the time, they had agreed to merge the two houses together, seeing as all future generations of Kazames and Uzumakis would be of both lines. They repaired the damaged equipment already there using wood that they got from the forest around the house, doing the work manually, which was slow but productive, and they rebuilt the assault course using extra weapons, and they stayed there for over 6 hours, creating it with the help of 30 Kagabunshin from the both of them. And they'd had a blood clone of Naruto's get whatever supplies they didn't already have or could get from the forest from the shops in the village and come back. Up with them. It took surprisingly little time to get the whole place fixed up, taking only 10 hours as a combined effort, which included a full-length assault course at Jounin level, a long chain of seals around the area, which when activated would make the ground turn into Doro Bunshins, or IWA Bunshins, and attack whoever was training there. so that the bunshins would go back to the earth when defeated to be used again. They had also created a pretty large body of water using water jutsus, where they could practice their Suidon and Katon jutsus. Naruto was sort of able to use Mokuton jutsus, being of distant descent of the Shandame, and they created a new set of trees to practice whatever against or on, and they had targets set up inside the trees which would swivel around randomly using seals, which Naruto was constantly getting better at. Deciding that they still had time to kill, they created another training course, though this one was different, and they made it inside the forest that surrounded the house, and would also serve as further protection, seeing as how the woods were rigged up with over 1,000 kunai throwers that were rigged to motion detectors. The idea of the new course was that they had created a fake forest path, mutating the trees to allow great spots for the fake attackers, which were just Kage bunshins that were created by Naruto's newest creation. It was basically a chakra power source, and was made from a very powerful crystal that had seals all around it, and formed a synthetic chakra system, using Naruto's greatest plausible theory, and this proved that it worked like he thought it was. The crystal would recharge itself when the course wasn't being used to always be active when it was in use. The morning after, they spent a good deal of time going through the assault course and making improvements to keep on making the course harder, to try and create a course that even the Hokage himself would have trouble with. Naruto was putting his week off to good use and learning techniques from his family. And on the third day, he started going through his dad's notes, which were far less organized than his own, which were inside his journal, but they were clear enough despite the untidy scrawl which was a common factor between the two of them. He managed to work out the starting steps that his father had used for creating the legendary Hiraishin no Jutsu, which had been the winning factor in the Konoha WA War. But all in all, Naruto had to admit that whilst the technique itself was practical in the sense that the use would be able to get somewhere incredibly fast, it was impractical in the sense that the user needed a special object already in a place before the technique could be used, and so had to be premeditated, which was something that, despite its usefulness in battle, was something for geniuses like Shikamaru, who could tell where the enemy was headed 1 mile away because he'd had bacon for breakfast, or something equally brain-bogglingly idiotic. Nope. Naruto needed something that would allow him to travel at very high speeds, which didn't include taking off his weights, and hopefully by just placing highly complicated but possible tags on his legs, which would allow him to channel chakra through his legs without doing the damage that it does after a certain amount of time or chakra. This gave him something to ponder on, but then he decided to put it aside for the time being and try to make some more progress on bringing his master theory to life. "Ka-san," said Naruto on the 4th day. "Yes?" asked Tsunade, slightly distractedly as she pored over a gigantic tome on medicinal chakra techniques and theories that Naruto had lent her from the Kazame library. "Could you teach me how to use your super strength technique?" Now, this made her look up. She had offered several times, but he had declined each time, saying that he would get stronger the proper way and beat her in a test of strength one day. She grinned and said, "Finally realize that you're going to need my help to be able to beat me?" "Nah, I realized that if I ever want to get Kesh to shut up about my hair, it would be to punch him through a wall." A vein throbbed up against her forehead, making Naruto laugh. Just kidding. Actually, I want to learn because I've realized that you can never have enough advantages in battle, and I could already hit someone through a wall if I dropped the weights or got really pissed off at someone, but being annoyed, dropping weights, and having chakra enhanced super strength would make one hell of a good combination, and it could also help with an idea I'm working on. You have too many ideas, she retorted, and Naruto just snorted in return. Probably, but this is in the good ideas section. So will you teach me? He pleaded. Of course, she replied, beaming happily. Keshiro just couldn't believe his luck. Yes, he often said a few things to Tsunade, teasingly, which resulted in his flying through more walls than was healthy. One wall was already bordering on unhealthy, but that one hurts a bitch when it's Tsunade who hit you. And also when she'd been heavily overprotective of Naruto and would hit him for the smallest of things. But that had been before he had become a hunter Nin and she'd finally let up a bit on the heavy mothering. But now, she was teaching the blonde bundle of terror-inducing energy how to hit people through walls without so much as concentrating, which meant having to carry 2 times more back armor, which had cost him a bloody fortune. He sighed and watched as Tsunade helped Naruto get to grips with exactly when to let off the chakra blast from his fist, which of course, him being Naruto, he would think about for less than a day before coming up with a solution to his problem. They wouldn't hear anything about it for about 3 days before he came back with a brand new and improved version of whatever the hell they were teaching him. In the middle of those 3 days, he had done the technique that they had shown him with Kyuubi's chakra, which in turn would result in the leveling of a dozen trees or so before the end of the first day. Oh joys! It was on the 5th day that Naruto trained by himself, trying out his new jutsu tags. He had combined the one which created a flame, putting it on a time delay option, which was basically done by another tag that would send out a small pulse of chakra after a set amount of time, which would in turn activate the next tag about 5 minutes after the first one had set off. Naruto had slightly underestimated the power of his new weapon, the 3 tags together in one, but it sure was bloody powerful. The first tag that set off was the one that would replicate at a high speed the Katon, Kasumiengo no Jutsu, Fire Release, covering Mist Technique, which formed a gas that was incredibly flammable. He decided that it would best be put to use inside a building. It would trap the flammable gas inside before the time-delayed fire tag lighted and filled the place up with a sea of fire, which with the speed in which it lighted would set off an explosion. It would also make a good weapon for an ambush, seeing as the gas was colorless and didn't smell of anything. And if he created a containment seal set, then it would be perfect. Along with it, he created the Uzumaki Special Smoke Bomb, which with his newfound and constantly expanding knowledge, thanks to the ever-handy blood clones, he had improved the weapon to the point that one smoke bomb, the same size as the regular shinobi ones, would create an impenetrable, chakra-laced smoke screen 10 times as big as the originals. And the chakra lacing meant that it would work against the Sharingan and Byakugan. His flashbang was equally newly powerful and would leave the enemies blinded and disorientated for twice as long. He had also finally gotten to work on a long theoretical project of his, thanks to the books which he now, and to explain a lot of things to him. He was currently in the creation process of an explosive which would send out a pulse of chakra, which would interfere with brain signals by turning the chakra into electricity on impact, and if done right, could send the target to sleep instantly or even kill them, which was unsurprisingly much easier. He had, also thanks to his newfound knowledge and massive books filled with all sorts of things, finally made a start on turning his master idea to life. To summarize things greatly, he wanted to completely redesign the body's chakra system. Chapter 7. Crack.